Okay, welcome everyone to Community Camp for Palestine. We are extremely honoured to have two guests here this evening. Unfortunately, Dr. Fluxman was not able to join us, so apologies from him. But anyway, we're very, very honoured to have you both give your time to come and speak to us at camp. I'll introduce Dr. Swee, who is one of the founders of Medical Aid for Palestine, and has also spent many years both working for the NHS, 50 years I understand working for the NHS, but has also spent considerable time, over 40 years, working in Lebanon and the occupied Palestinian territory. So thank you so much for giving your time this evening.
Thank you.
And we're also very grateful to Dr. James Smith, who is part of the Healthcare Workers for Palestine group and is a lecturer at University College London in humanitarian policy and practice, and has also been, as I'm sure everyone is aware, out to Gaza during this genocide. So very big welcome to you as well. So the format for the evening, what we thought we would do is just have a sort of start a conversation with both of them here, and then hear from both of them about their experiences historically and now, and then open the floor up for Q&A from the audience, and hopefully round up in about an hour's time. Okay, so I would like to start. I understand they did almost a similar format yesterday in a different location. So I'd very much like to start by asking you with your experience, Swee. You've been involved, as you say, in the NHS for 50 years, but also first-hand direct experience in both Lebanon and the occupied Palestinian territories of I guess Israeli occupation, apartheid, aggression, and crimes. And it would be, I think, interesting to hear about your experiences dating back 40 years, but also your reflections on what wasn't done in order to prevent us reaching this place of unprecedented horror and criminality on the part of, obviously, the Zionist entity of Israel, but also the international community and our own politicians just not even a mile up the river. Thank you. Do you want to use that one?
Thank you so much, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I will begin by casting myself back 43 years. This is July, and what I was doing 43 years ago was watching the television when I came back. I work in St. Thomas's, which is, again, the other side of the river. And I came home one night and I saw television scenes of airplanes destroying and attacking another country. Huge bombs, flattening whole apartments, killing people, and mercilessly. And of course, when I listened to the bulletin, it was Israel dropping bombs on a country called Lebanon. And at that time, I was a Zionist through and through. I bought into the chosen people of God. I bought into Israel as a democracy, and I bought into the fact that the land of Israel is sacrosanct, it's given to them by God. All that. But what I cannot square up is what has it got to do with murdering children, women, and ordinary unarmed people. And of course the BBC, which everybody listens to the BBC in this country, and I'm no exception, the BBC portrays it as an anti-terrorism exercise, that the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, has set up its bases in Lebanon, and therefore Israel has got the duty, with the support of the world, to get the PLO out, to clean up Lebanon. The exact words were, to make an omelette, we have to crack eggs. But every day as I watch, I just cannot understand. These are people, they are not eggs. So the more I watch, the more upset I get. And of course, my My church, my friends, my Jewish friends did not help me at all. They just justified the killing and destruction. So finally, I packed in, resigned from my job on the NHS, and joined Christian Aid and flew out to Lebanon. And that time, when we landed, we couldn't land, we got to land in Cyprus because Israel was carrying a continuous 36 hours bombardment of Lebanon and Beirut. So we got to park ourselves in Cyprus and wait for the bombardment to stop and take a ferry into Lebanon. That's how I landed in Lebanon. When I landed in Lebanon, I saw massive destruction, blocks and blocks of building being bombed out, three-dimensional and frightening. Apartments, which are several stories high, get sucked in and flattened. The word is pancake, burying everybody alive. And to put in proportion, a medical team is not helpful at all because people are dead. They took us to work in a basement hospital because there's nowhere safe to put the medical team. And we worked, we have phosphorus burns, we have children who lost their spleen, half their liver, lost their legs, their arms, their eyes, coming to us. It was a horrible scene. And one thing that my nurses, my American nurses, called the Begin-Reagan syndrome. Begin was the Prime Minister of Israel, Reagan was the President of USA. And typically it's a child who will not eat, will not talk, who've lost both their parents, who have lost their homes, frightened, maybe amputation of one arm, two arms, or even both legs, without spleen, without anything, totally destitute. So that went on for a week or so, and then hallelujah, the PLO agreed to evacuate. The reason why they wanted to evacuate is that Israel has told them that they will flatten the whole of Lebanon. They got enough bombs to do it if the PLO stayed. Now you must understand, the PLO was actually a group of refugees. They were Palestinian refugees. So they got no choice but to leave in order to save the country. So the PLO began to evacuate. And then the first morning of the evacuation, I came out of the basement operating theater and saw posters put up everywhere. And the poster said, "Goodbye Beirut, I love you, good luck. Maybe I'll never see you again." So I was wondering, who were these PLO people who actually love the people of Beirut? Who are they? Terrorists do not love. So it's that kind of thing that you begin to understand a little bit. Nobody told me, nobody explained to me, it just put me there to work, to treat the wounded. And then I realized that perhaps they're human beings, because human beings love. Human beings feel bereft. We miss our family. And I found a woman on the pavement, among many displaced people, all waiting for water. And this woman had with her a whole lot of children. And she was crying. And I asked, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Look, my sons were killed by bombs. And now my husband and my only grown-up son is leaving with the PLO, never to come back. And I have to fend for my family. I don't know what to do." So this woman taught me something. The PLO, whom the world calls terrorists, are human beings. They are human beings who have grown up in Lebanon, and therefore they are people like me. They got families, they got loved ones, and they were being deported, and the Palestinian families were being broken up. You remember this very carefully when you look at the situation in Gaza. Suppose the fighters agreed to leave Gaza, their family will be left behind. So it's a breaking up the family. So, right, anyway, these are little things which I pick up. I'm trying to share with you how I changed, what happened, the transition. So with a ceasefire guaranteed by the USA, the wonderful USA, the Pax Americana, underwritten by the USA, called the Habib Peace Plan, a multinational peacekeeping force came in to protect those who are left behind, both Lebanese and Palestinians. So the people who were displaced and traumatized were encouraged to go back to their homes and camps to rebuild their homes. They are safe. Bring the children back. And I was asked to work in a Gaza hospital. So we selected 6 of us in the medical team, 2 surgeons, 2 anesthetists, and nurses. And we were taken to Gaza hospital. En route, I saw so devastating destruction that alone was a shocking experience. I arrived in Gaza hospital to find that it was a 12-floor high building. The top 2 floors were blown up, and then the lower floors were shelled, but it stood. The other 8 hospitals ran by the Palestine Red Crescent Society was systematically bombed, completely flattened, bearing patients and medical equipment and staff as well. So that was my introduction to the destruction of healthcare. And we went to Gaza hospital, and our job is to set up a trauma orthopedic department. Building it, I remember Ben Arloff painting the walls and clearing the rubble with the Palestinian doctors and nurses and Lebanese. Look, up to this point, I still thought that Palestinians were terrorists. I was working with them, but I didn't know. Until one day I went down from the 9th floor of the hospital to the neighboring areas that were badly destroyed. And I spoke to the people there, and I said, hello, are you Lebanese? They said, no, we're Palestinians. Then I immediately have a shock. I said, PLO? No, we are not PLO. And my nurse put her arms around me. Dr. Swee, welcome to Sabra Shatila. So over the next few days, I learned to know the Palestinians. I learned of their culture, their cuisine, their aspirations, their family, their history. And the history stunned me, because these are people who have lost their homes. At that time, 34 years ago. Expelled from their ancestral homeland. 750,000 were just driven out at the point of massacre to just walk across the boundaries of Palestine in the neighboring areas. And camps were formed, and in those camps, the children were born refugees, grew up refugees, and would die refugees. And they're still dying refugees today. Well, but why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because we need to humanize the Palestinian people. For a genocide to happen, people have to be dehumanized, right? If you call them terrorists, you call them animals, you call them cockroaches, you enable the beginning of a process for their extermination. So when we speak about Palestinians, we have to know in our hearts that the first thing we have to do is to rehumanize them. Because I thank my experience with the Palestinians, I thank that I was given the opportunity to live with them, to learn to respect them, and to love them in solidarity. Some of you might not have the opportunity to meet Palestinians where they were, despite their suffering. My nurses and my colleagues come early, in fact they never leave the hospital, looking after the wounded when their own families were killed and bombed and wounded or evacuated with no future to go home to. and yet they serve their people with such dignity and such love and care that I wish the NHS is the same. I know I shouldn't talk like that, but I've been an NHS doctor for nearly 50 years. It started off with a loving, caring organization, and now it's driven by something else, very toxic. I continue working with the NHS. I refuse to retire because I feel that in my personal capacity, I can show care to my patients and not treat them as a nuisance coming to clinic. Why are you here? Who asked you to come? Your GP doesn't know. Your GP can deal with this. You know, I discharge you. That is not the care we want. But that's a different story. And I think because of this, the BMA has cancelled me talking to their medical students. Because the message is, doctors are carers. Doctors are also here to stand in solidarity with their patients, with respect. And we treat our patients as our own family, not as clients. NHS managers call my patients clients. No, they are my patients. Don't call them clients. No, they are people. So back to the Palestinians. For 3 weeks, they were rebuilding their lives because they actually believed that under US protection they'll be safe. But 3 weeks came the BBC announcement that the PLO has violated ceasefire agreement and left 2,000 terrorists behind. Everybody swallowed that. Hundreds of Israeli tanks drove from the south, invading Lebanon and Beirut again. A contingent came to our refugee camps, surrounded it, and the Sabra Shatila massacre started. I need not tell you the horrors we encounter, the number of people that were brought in, dying, and died while we were treating them. And it became very dark. Our mortuary was filled with dead bodies. We ran out of blood, we ran out of food, we ran out of medicine, and people flocked into the hospital, occupying the spaces, lying on the floors, because they believe that this is the only place where they can be safe, because there are 21 foreigners in Gaza hospital. Maybe they won't invade the hospital and kill them as the other PRCS hospital. But that's not true. That's not true at all. On the last day, a group of militia came in early in the morning and ordered every foreigner out. At that time, we have a group of very ill patients in ITU, and I fear for them because I know that the moment all of us expats team leave, they will come in and murder our patients. A Swedish nurse, my colleague and my heroine, refused to leave and offered herself as a human shield to protect our patients in a very professional way. She told the one in charge of the militia who was shouting at us, saying, look, the patients need care, and I'm here to care for them. I will keep them safe and alive until the International Red Cross can get in and evacuate them, until my embassy can come and evacuate me. I will stay. You can have the rest of the team. And as I left the hospital, I realized that while we were trying to save a few dozen lives, thousands of people were massacred in their homes, in the camp alleys, in the main street, everywhere. There were decaying bodies, dead bodies. And that is my introduction to Palestine. Because on every dead body is a refugee identity card saying where they're from. Galilee, that's why it's called Peace Galilee. If you murdered all the Palestinian refugees from Galilee, there will be peace in Galilee. There's nobody to come home. From West Bank, Nablus, to Karem, Hebron, Haifa, Jaffa, and also from the south of Gaza. So they're all dead now. Well, so I understand that moment that Palestinians were never terrorists. They were the victims of terror. They are the victims of terror which the whole world tried to silence, to block their testimony from coming out, so that they can be killed and murdered and never be allowed to go home. This is what is it all about. The silencing process still goes on. The press using their power to put out lies, to divert attention, to enable the killing of the Palestinians continues. Every time a Palestinian, and now it extends to people who support the Palestinians, are called terrorists, I squirm, because I know how by dehumanizing human beings, dehumanizing refugees who are the ultimate victims of injustice, by calling them terrorists, you are preparing them to be murdered. If you call someone who support the Palestinians, who speak up for the Palestinians, and come forth to demonstrate for the Palestinians, to march for the Palestinians, terrorists, you are also preparing international and national opinion to dehumanize them and prepare them to be persecuted. You cannot have someone who spoke up for Palestinians, who's speaking up for Palestinians, who's raising money for Palestinians, arrested and remanded in custody for months and months and months just for speaking for Palestinians. Why is it such a small group today? People are afraid. People are afraid. And I really salute you for coming. I'm sorry I don't have time to continue talking to you about what happened to Lebanon. Because you have come. You have come to support. And this is very precious. It is easy to support when it doesn't impact your own security and safety. It is easy to support when we're on the rise. It is difficult to support when you're down. After the massacre, I was so broken that I went to visit one of my patients' grandmother who walked 20 kilometers from South Lebanon to find 27 members of a family murdered. And after listening to her testimony, which I printed in my book, I was completely devastated. I feel as though I should be buried in the rubble together with my patients. But when I came out of the house, I met a group of children. And one of them spotted me and said, "Oh, the Chinese doctor, they didn't kill her. She's back." Because they saw us being taken away by the militia, so they thought we were dead. And I always tell the Palestinian kids, I'm not Chinese. I'm British. I'm not Britannia. No, Dr. Swee, you're not British. British, very, very bad. They gave our country away. You Chinese. Chinese, very, very good. So, what am I to say? You know, I only thank my parents for giving me this kind of face. So they put their arms around me. They were orphans. They got no homes. You know, they're living in ruin and rubble. And then they asked me to take a picture of them. I said, of course. I don't know what it's all about. I'll take a picture of you. So when I was actually switching, I don't have this wonderful camera. I got an Olympus strip. Okay, so it's only infinity, portrait, and whatever it is. And in between, there are 3 buttons to press and then. And when I was switching buttons, they put their hands in the victory sign and said, "Let Israel come. We are not afraid." When I was taking the picture, I didn't realize what a historical moment it was. Behind them was Sabra Shatila destroyed. The paint on the wall, which was freshly applied when they tried to rebuild their homes, are still not dry. In front of them were bodies put up for identification. The air was filled with a stench of decaying human flesh. But between death, decay, and destruction were the Palestinian children. So, do not be depressed. Do not feel isolated. No, that night I walked home. I walked past Israeli tanks. I walked out past bulldozers. I walked out people dragging Palestinians from buildings and arresting them. But in my mind's eye, I could see nothing but the Palestinian children, defiant, resilient, and unafraid. And I want to pass it to you to remember that today, the suffering in Gaza is enormous. And we are prepared to stand by them. And we are not afraid, like they were never afraid. Some of the people in Gaza told me they're exhausted. They can't think. They're hungry. And they're ill. And they're in pain. Where are our friends? We want them to know we are here. The British government try and make us terrorists because we support them. But we know one thing. They are not terrorists. And we know for sure we are not terrorists. We support justice. We stand up for justice. And we have no fear. So they better watch this space.
Thank you so much, Swee. I think I've drawn a number of threads from what you've been speaking about, and I think it's really insightful, pertinent, and horrific so much of what you say speaks to the moment now. But you're speaking about Sabra and Shatila, you're speaking about 1982.
Yeah.
Yet everything resonates with what we are all seeing in plain sight for the last 21 months. And I think, the various threads that you speak of, there's this dehumanization that your personal journey in that, in realizing that these were not terrorists. And what we see today is not just this sort of ubiquitous condemning of Palestinians as terrorists but this dehumanizing from right the way through Israeli leadership, through the military, through cultural figures, through society, down through the children of Israel, and also right the way expressed against the Palestinians, right the way down through to their children, where we hear Israeli military and political leaders referring to the need to kill all Palestinians because their children are the future terrorists. And as you say, this scene of complete devastation that you witnessed could literally be describing most of Gaza today and the West Bank increasingly. And also, though, how you, in response to that, clearly, I think many of us are coming to this. Certainly my experiences, I've been peripherally involved in the Palestinian cause for many, many years. But these last 2 years have drawn so many of us in an unprecedented way. And this Palestinian resilience and steadfastness and resistance has really, truly touched the world and touched millions, billions of people around the world. And there is this unprecedented global movement for justice and liberation for the Palestinians. So I think that's another thread. So to hear directly from you, this is nothing new. This resilience, again, goes way back. And finally, these violations of international humanitarian law going all the way back. Where was the justice for the Sabra and Shatila victims? Where is the justice today? How do we find justice? And that's really, James, you can speak to so much of this, of what Dr. Swee's just said, but as a lecturer in humanitarian law and practice and policy, where what has that journey been from no justice for Palestine? We know ourselves that even the UN that agreed to hand the land in 1948 to Israel, that came from the UN, and this total betrayal of the international community of the Palestinians has never been as stark and grotesque and barbaric as it is now. So as a lecturer in that, you know, and as also someone who has been and seen similar horror to what Swee is referring to from decades ago, just your thoughts really and reflections on those points would be great. Thank you.
We're doing a great bubble act, okay?
Yeah. As a lecturer in a declining field, a field that is being eroded in a way that is also unprecedented in history. I mean, we know that justice, we won't find justice in the courts, we won't find justice in Parliament. That's long been established. There's a certain bitter irony to, you know, alongside the vote to establish what is now the State of Israel in 1948, another very big thing happened 6 or 7 months later, which was the establishment and the ratification of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And there is something so stark in such an unjust process several months prior, and then this rhetorical declaration of a state of universal human rights in the face of the law, to be upheld by the so-called United Nations. I mean, one of the things that's happened over the course of the last 30 plus years or so, I would say, is that the field of humanitarianism has grown in such a way that it is now the sort of dominant form of governance at the global level. And that's not to say that people govern in a way that is sensitive to a common humanity, but rather that humanitarianism flourishes where the political will to pursue justice, to address root causes, has failed. So, you know, we now have what we see in Gaza, which is this sort of fixation on a very limited notion of humanitarianism, which becomes smaller and smaller by the day. It's so well established, this kind of this sort of pattern or this tendency that it has a name. It's called the humanitarian alibi, whereby you know, violence and injustice is disguised behind the veneer of humanitarianism. The mistake that Israel has made is that it's taken it to such a depraved depth that even, you know, even sort of historical supporters of Israel are now saying this is a step too far. So the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, for example, you know, more than 700 Palestinians shot or killed by other means trying to seek food from these so-called distribution centers, that there is something so disgusting and so depraved now that even, you know, the label of humanitarianism doesn't stick any longer. So we've seen this sort of exponential growth of humanitarianism at a time where the law and politics have failed, and now we are seeing the rapid decline of humanitarianism. The field is in a state of unprecedented decline. I mean, I have students of mine who are so committed to the values and principles that many of us subscribe to, certainly the people here subscribe to, there are no, I mean, these institutions are being defunded, they're collapsing. The so-called norms and frameworks and so on that were meant to give shape to space for protected humanitarian practice, I mean, they've been exposed now as a complete fallacy. We've long known that international law doesn't serve or protect the Palestinian people. If it did, we would have seen action not only in the wake of Sabra and Shatila, but long before then. We would never have seen the establishment of what is now the state of Israel if international law meant anything. So we're now just seeing the culmination of that, and it's all just being brought really into stark relief. I don't know if that at all answers the question that you asked me.
Absolutely,
But,
Should I try
yeah.
this? Should I use this one? Yeah. Would you like to respond to that at all?
Okay. I agree with everything you say, so I'm not challenging you. It's true, but I think that there is a role for humanitarianism, but it has to be done. You see, what is charity? I thought long and hard, because when we were forming MAP, right, we can't win the political argument, right? At that time, you're rewinding 43 years ago. We are trying to humanize the Palestinians. We are trying to talk about their rights. Nobody would listen. Nobody would listen at all. But maybe I should switch this thing off.
No, it's
there.
fine. I've turned mine off. So.
Okay, so I remember when I was leaving Lebanon. I was going from Lebanon to Israel to testify to the Israeli Commission of Inquiry. The Palestinians told me, okay, we are grateful if you give us food and medicine, but what we really want to do is for you to tell our story. You can tell our story through our suffering. So, it is not that we like to appeal for food or medicine with what we show pictures of our hospitals being destroyed, but through that we are able to tell the story and humanize the Palestinian people. So charity, I don't like the word NGO anymore, I've given it up. Charity could be love, and love could be solidarity. And solidarity is the respect for people, for justice, and sharing their struggle with them, with compassion and love. I think if you see in that way, you see, then that dirty word and the dirty description of humanitarianism can be thrown away.
So on that note about solidarity, James, you've just been to Gaza. I think if that's the sort of supreme act of solidarity, isn't it, to put your effectively own life on the line, to go out there and work with the healthcare workers who, as we know, put their lives on the line each and every day. And I think when we were here on Tuesday evening, it's this, and I think we will see it anyway on social media, and you refer to it dating back to Sabra and Shatila, they don't leave. They insist, and we've seen so many directors of hospitals insisting on staying with their patients and medical staff, and then subsequently being abducted, murdered, disappeared. How could you tell us a little bit about your trip to Gaza and how that supreme act of solidarity, and you as well dating back, how is that received? And how important is also just solidarity in like this camp? How important is that to the Palestinians? What were they saying to you about these acts of solidarity?
I think the first thing to say is that, it's not for me to determine what is or isn't an act of solidarity. I think that the Palestinian people will make that clear, and I think they have made that clear. It's been made very clear by the Palestinian trade union movement, by various Palestinian committees, by, of course, Palestinians themselves that have spoken to me directly. And they can see through these acts of charity, and of course they can see where this sort of NGO industrial complex is so fundamentally flawed and so fundamentally complicit. I've just lost my train of thought, sorry. What were we talking about? Solidarity.
Yeah. And your trip to
solidarity, not charity. That's such a powerful statement. The first thing to say really is that, again, I also struggle with this idea of there being kind of gradations of solidarity. I think I was in a very privileged position that I could go to Gaza, but I see solidarity through all of this. And indeed, I was just speaking to someone before we started this evening that it won't be a single act or a single statement that will bring about an end to this. It will be all of these efforts cumulatively, the sort of consistent and sustained push that has continued and will continue. And I think that is what will bring about not only an end to the genocide, but an end to the violent occupation of Palestine and the Palestinian people. So yes, solidarity. The other thing I think is important to mention is that presence is often conflated as an act of solidarity. So I see a lot of organizations making claims of solidarity, a lot of individuals making claims of solidarity, who are not moving with the spirit of or the politics of solidarity. Again, if we think about how certain organizations have operated, certainly prior to the genocide, but also during the genocide as well, undermining health sovereignty in Palestine, undermining political leadership, the expertise of Palestinians, and so on. Now, of course, what we're left with, in large part in Gaza, is a handful of internationally managed field hospitals, if we think about what's left of the healthcare system. And that was never really the strategy. The strategy was that international solidarity workers, if I can call them that, were intended that they would be embedded within the Ministry of healthcare system. Now, we don't know, of course, whether embedding international workers in the healthcare system would have changed the course. Would Israel have continued to systematically target and destroy the healthcare system? Perhaps. Well, in fact, they most certainly would have.
They would.
But now what we're left with is certainly an accelerated process that has undermined Palestinian health infrastructure, Palestinian health expertise, and leadership within the Palestinian healthcare system. And these are some of the same individuals and organizations that are claiming solidarity, that have played a part in that process, unfortunately. And again, this long predated the genocide. The humanitarian system and many of these organizations for a very, very long time have been implicated in the violence of occupation. And again, we can argue that there was perhaps limited maneuverability under the conditions of occupation and the stranglehold that Israel maintains over Gaza and throughout occupied Palestine. But certainly there are things that those organizations could have and should have done differently that they didn't.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I agree. I certainly agree. Because, there is an NGO industry, and that really upsets me a lot. Because I think, it's patronizing, it undermines, the dignity of the Palestinians, and it undermines their self-determination, which is prime. You see, they give their life to fight for their rights, their self-determination. And here we are, we tell you what to do. And if you don't, we don't give you food. If you upset us even more, we'll let you get killed. What is all that about? I think it makes me very angry, you see. So, but on the other, I think there's no choice. We just have to know that we are there for the Palestinians. We don't do anything which undermine them. We don't do anything without consulting them. We do whatever they ask us to do if we can. And then we will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and we'll be proud of our partnership. Without that, it's all rubbish.
And as two people, so I'll just say, as two people tapped very much into to Palestinians in Palestine, what are they asking us to do? Aside from, I absolutely agree about the NGO industrial complex and how deeply problematic it is from its inception onwards.
So would you be able to shed some light on what they would, in your experience, be asking us to do? And then we'll open it up to some Q&A.
Okay. I think the Palestinians are going through the darkest time of their history, and it's been a long, dark tunnel. But the first thing is that we must not desert them, and also we must be seen to be supporting them. That's the lowest common denominator. The second thing is that we have to constantly speak up for them. Sometimes it's very difficult. Speaking up is not easy. You know, it brings surprise, right? We get cancelled, we lose jobs. Yesterday we were at a wonderful academic session when somebody produced a set of graphs showing how people, medical workers are killed and so on. He has spent hours doing that, but he dare not put his name on it because he might be fired. So it's very difficult. But even under those circumstances, there's still a way to work. We have to let them know we are here. Right now, I think the worst thing that's going through them, apart from starvation, disease, homelessness, and so on and so forth, and being killed, never knowing whether you'll wake up in the morning or you'll see your children again. Apart from all that, is a sense of being deserted. And that we have to fight. Okay. And in terms of Gaza, I don't want to hear there'll be no more Gaza. That is not our job to decide. The Palestinians decide whether there's a Gaza tomorrow or not. Okay? Palestine belongs to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians belong to Palestine. Okay? That they're going through a very bitter and difficult time doesn't mean there's no future. Yeah. We, especially those that have just come to recognize Palestine within the last 2 years, didn't realize that the Palestinians has been through much worse. Right? We can't see a future, they can. I was sitting at one of the meetings, you know, Salman Abu Sita, Gada Kami, and also an Israeli kind of wonderful kind of intellectual. Gada can't see beyond tomorrow. Okay, she's so distraught. The Israelis can't see beyond a month. Salman Abu Sita is so cheerful. He said, I am optimistic. I'm optimistic. Then Gada snapped at him. Optimistic with what? Huh? In Arabic, okay? And said, I'm very optimistic. And you know, Professor Salman, he's got that wonderful smile. And then I realized that one of them is talking about tomorrow, the other is talking about 6 months, but Salman is talking about years, because he has been through, he's a product of the Nakba, right? And now he's seeing the Nakba come to a situation where the whole world, minus 20%, recognizes the history of Palestine, what the Palestinians have suffered. So he's optimistic. The very fact that I might not live to see it doesn't matter. It will happen. Yeah. Correct? So don't be depressed.
Swee was telling me off yesterday, I think, for being too nihilistic.
No, I didn't say that.
And I am still quite nihilistic. But I mean, you know, certainly in my lifetime, I have never seen a mobilization in support of Palestine and in pursuit of the liberation of Palestine like this. I mean, this is unprecedented in my 36 years, and you know, my parents have said the same. So are we closer to a liberated Palestine than we ever have been? I feel so, for sure. But to the question of solidarity, if I may, and then I'd really love to just get into some discussion. I'm actually just going to read a statement from the Palestinian trade union movement, because they've been very clear about this, and they've articulated far better than any of us who are not Palestinian could do. But when we talk about what is solidarity, this is what they say. We call on labor federations, drop all of your holdings in Israel, divest now. Every investment in Israel is a contribution to our oppression. Workers and trade unionists, every workplace and every trade union is a place to organize. Mobilize to eliminate Israeli investments from union pension funds and employers' portfolios, including partnerships with complicit companies. Francesca Albanese's latest report, paints that picture and brings it into stark relief. This is what Hassan Abbasita calls the genocide enablement apparatus. Workers along arms supply chains, we call on you to intervene and disrupt the flow of arms that sustain this genocide. Regardless of what the direct action groups are called, that work will continue and is continuing. Dock workers the world over, and of course many direct action groups here in the UK. Finally, center our liberation struggle. Tell the world about our struggle. We are fighting for our lives, for freedom, justice, and liberation. We need you to rise to this moment in history and move beyond statements. Be brave, take risks, and act with the urgency that Israel's genocide demands. So that is what solidarity looks like in the words of Palestinians themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's very uplifting. And also, I remember when we had Shawan Jabbar in here from Al-Haq, when they were here with the High Court case on the F-35 parts, and he was also a bit like Hassan Abbasita. He seemed to be quite jolly, and he ended the evening by telling us there will be peace. He was absolutely certain as well, and I think it is that long-term perspective when you come from generations and generations that know that the struggle is long, but we endure. So opening up to the audience, I'll give this other, Steve, can you do that? So we'll have some Q&A and then, so if anyone would like to ask a question.
Hello, I've got a question. You were talking about the obvious thing that Palestine feels deserted and ignored by everybody, and we understand that every government in the world is in the pay of the Zionists. Can you hear me? You can hear me.
Put the mic closer.
Put it closer to your mouth.
No, the mic, you're actually...
Sorry, I'm just saying
that's
that
better.
we obviously know that every government in the world is in the pay of the Zionists, and they have ignored and turned away from the massacre, the daily, hourly massacre of the Palestinians. But do the Palestinians know and feel that the majority of the population of every country all over the world, whether it be from Africa to Australia, from South America to Europe, everybody is with the Palestinians? Are they aware of that? Do they feel that? And do they know that it's our governments and our press that give the impression that we're not interested? Are they aware that we are with them?
I think most of them are, but in extreme suffering, you feel deserted. Even you know that there are a million people marching on the streets. But you feel deserted. But it's our job to tell them we are here. So recently, what I've resorted to doing is that whenever something happened in Palestine, I will write to them. I'll email them. I don't know their email, but I'll force one of the NGOs to print it out and take it to them. Like for instance, Dr. Naja. I email her, I say, you don't know me, my name is Swee. I learned about you and so on and so forth. And then I wrote to the president of PRCS when 15 of his workers were killed. I wrote to him out of the blue. I wrote to Tarasi, who was the CEO of Akli Hospital, when Akli was flattened on Palm Sunday. And I said, if you're busy, don't have to reply. I don't even expect you to read it, but I want you to know that we are with you. We feel your pain. And if we can, we want to share it, but we can't. So I think it works. I think you should do this and CC it to your best friend who will keep a record of it, okay? And then it goes Palestine. And believe you me, to all of them I've written to, I get a reply within 24 hours. And they always say, dear Swee, we appreciate it so much that you're thinking of us. My words are so inarticulate. Sometimes I write rubbish and fall asleep, but it is important. You can do it. It's not difficult. I don't know which charity you support. The charity will do it for you, okay?
Okay.
You
Another question?
Yeah.
Maybe any other questions from the audience? Tim Satish behind you.
Hello. Free Palestine. Yeah, hi, my name's Tim. Following on from what you said about solidarity and what we can do here, we must be brave. And I think what we must do here is fight Zionism in this country. Because Zionism has a terrible control over our government and what it's doing, how it's influencing the courts, how it's influencing the friends of mine are now in prison because of what the Zionism influence through the CPS, through the legal, the police system. So we must fight Zionism here. We're under attack here for being here, and we're going to resist it. We're going to resist and stay here. We're going to resist any time we come up against Yvette Coopers of this world. We must resist them. We must fight Zionism here. We can't fight in Palestine. I can't go to Palestine.
I can't either.
You can't
I'm
either.
banned, yeah.
You're banned. Yeah, I don't think I'd get in. But the thing is, we're here. We must fight Zionism here. We must resist every sign of Zionism. Every time it rears its ugly head, we must fight it. We must stand in solidarity with our comrades in Jung and fight Zionism here. That's how we can be solidarity. We can show solidarity. Just to say, I think the way forward, and I'm going to talk to the rest of the camp about this, I think it's going to be through mass civil disobedience. Mass civil disobedience. We must organise, we must work with all the groups that we know, we must put little differences aside and become a mass movement of social civil disobedience. Following after Gandhi and Martin Luther King. That's what they did, and that's what we must do. We must be brave and resist this Zionist government here. Thank you.
Can you comment briefly on the BMA's very belated statement which actually criticizes Israel? And I can't remember whether they used the word genocide or not, but isn't that a significant moment?
Yes. And also their cases against their own
Yeah.
medical workers at the same time that are ongoing.
Yeah.
I think, yes, it's definitely a significant moment. There are people here in the audience who have been involved in one way or another with some of that work. I mean, 12 months ago, I wouldn't have imagined that at the last annual General Assembly, the British Medical Association would have voted so overwhelmingly in the way that it did. Much stronger language, positioning on Palantir and the relationship between Palantir and the NHS. Several other motions distancing themselves from the Israeli Medical Association. There are very obvious weaknesses in a lot of the wording there, so severing ties with the Israeli Medical Association until it declares that it's committed to medical neutrality, rather than, of course, until we see an end to occupation, an end to genocide, an end to Israeli healthcare worker complicity in these systems and structures of violence. So there's a lot of work to be done. We've known for decades that Israeli medical workers are complicit in torture of Palestinians. That is exceptionally well documented. And still to this day, entities like the Israeli Medical Association and so on have failed to act. So yes, it is a significant moment. I think we need to celebrate these wins. It's quite clear to me that we're pulling at the threads now, and it is starting to unravel, and the momentum is building. But that work, really, this is just one step towards the realization of the many ways in which healthcare institutions are also complicit. Francesca Albanese's report doesn't talk about medical institutions, it doesn't talk about humanitarian institutions. There are a multitude of sectors that aren't featured in her report, but the entirety of the society in which we live in is in one way or another complicit. So that's really what now needs to be exposed moving forward. Yeah, Swee, I don't know if you want to say anything about the BMA. Well, maybe just one final thing, if I may, which is that there is something that feels, you celebrate, maybe celebrate's the wrong word, but that it's important to recognize this progress on the one hand, and at the same time I feel really angry and enraged, actually, one, at how long it has taken, but two, that to issue these sort of statements now, but without accounting for how long it took, accounting for the ways in which you've mistreated your own members, accounting for the fact that you put Swee to the street and you wouldn't allow her to speak at a conference. Only a matter of a few months ago, shortly before the BMA annual general meeting, there's something really perverse about that. Omar Al-Akkad's statement, one day everyone will have been against this. We're starting to see that now. These very same institutions that have failed the Palestinian people, that form part of the genocide enablement apparatus, that are now trying to say, we were always against this. And we really need to protect against that, because that will be what we see over the course of the years and months to come.
Okay, since I'm the one that got cancelled. Okay, I tell you, I'm really delighted with the resolutions, okay, and the overwhelming support. And I don't claim any role in it. A lot of people worked very hard, including the people who want to hear me speak. It's all their effort. And you forgot one thing. They have passed the resolution that criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic.
Yes.
It is the only professional organization in this country that's that. So that's really something, okay? So as to whether they put me out on the streets, I actually enjoyed the rally on the pavement. And of course, you see, you have Tabby coming to my rescue, everybody coming, Gaza coming, and it's wonderful because it is so good and it's a nice place to hold a rally. Everybody pass by, everybody honk, and I think we should do more of that. Every time somebody get cancelled or get fired, we should hold a rally right in front of the bosses. No, they haven't, but it doesn't matter. If they continue to respect what they have voted for, I don't need an apology. I don't. Words speak. No, I think words are words, but action is louder than words, right? So if they actually put what they resolve into action, it's okay. And I have not even given up my membership. I told everybody, please don't resign from the BMA. Stay there to make it a better organization. Yeah.
Doug, go for it, Doug.
I just want to make 2 points relating to what you've talked about this evening. So today I was at the Royal Courts of Justice to support Dr. Ali, and all the things that you just mentioned with regards to the BMA and the General Medical Council was absolutely held to account to the highest order in a 5-hour statement by this absolute powerhouse of a woman. Like you said, these cases should never be coming to court in the first place, especially one of the highest courts in Britain. However, the opportunity for Dr. Ali to present 1,000 pages of written testimony against the GMC, against Zionism, and against the structures that they're using to oppress people is all part of dismantling these frameworks that are used to oppress us and the Palestinians. So to see that today was why I came out of there just feeling like we have this, we have the brightest brains in Britain and the most powerful people in Britain behind us, and most morally powerful people in Britain on the side of the Palestinians, and they see this. The second thing I'd like to touch on is the question of solidarity. Now, Dr. Smith, 2 nights ago, mentioned a good friend of many people here called Nameen. Now, I only befriended Nameen 6 months ago, but she will message you day and night. She will send you a voice note, and she's a young doctor training in Gaza. She has dreams to carry on her studies in Pakistan, and as you said a couple of nights ago, there's no one who cares more about her people than Nameen. And for example, my friend Shabnam, everyone's friends with Shabnam, I'm sure. Yeah. She's getting married on Sunday.
Aww.
Now, she showed me a message from Nameen, and Nameen pleaded and begged with her, please, Shabnam, do not open social media on your special day. I'm thinking about your wedding already. And this is a young woman in her early 20s who's living in a tent, and she's going to study medicine every day. She's dealing with the most horrific cases in this genocide, yet she's still thinking about the people who are standing the strongest with her here in Britain. So when you talk about the question of solidarity and whether the Palestinians see us, they absolutely do see us, and it's very empowering for them to keep continuing. Thank you.
Perhaps just a couple more questions?
Yeah.
So perhaps just a couple more questions if there are any? And then, yeah, there's Lucy down here as well, Satish.
Yeah.
I can top that, but I just had a couple of questions. The first one was around,
Speak up.
the first one was around medical aid for Palestinians. So the ex-CEO of MAP is now a sitting MP, and she recently abstained from the vote to prescribe Palestine action.
She what?
She abstained from the vote to prescribe Palestine action.
Okay.
And she sits as a Labour MP. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts or opinions around that, if you wanted to share them. And I think just a second one, just out of curiosity, sort of following a bit on from what Doug was saying about doctors who are being persecuted, I suppose, for standing up for Palestine. I just wondered what support they're getting at the moment. How widely visible is what's happening to them? How widely visible is that within the NHS of what they're going through? I'd just like to know about, I suppose, what their culture is inside at the moment.
What the culture?
Yeah, what the culture is like. You know, are there still doctors who are still quite afraid to talk about what's happening?
The culture within BMA.
Or is it that actually people who work in the NHS are actually now coming out and being very open about speaking about what's happening? I mean, I'm sure the vote at the BMA gives some sort of indication of a maybe shift in culture, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. That's it.
Okay. I better do this. It's about Melanie. Okay. Right. About Melanie Ward abstaining. That's the first question, right? Well, I don't know whether you knew that I backed a letter put out by health workers about her running with Keir Starmer. Okay, and knowing that Keir Starmer has just announced this was winding back to the beginning of the genocide, that the denial of food, water, and fuel and medicine is self-defense. Okay, so of course it's very distressing, right? So it's terrible that, you know, we have appointed someone like that. I just don't know what to say. Okay, but and then they cut me off. That's fine. I'm not here to kind of say how sorry I am, you know, how badly I'm. Doesn't matter. I want to tell you something. I am a person half a glass full, not half a glass empty. Thank God she abstained. She could have voted for. You see what I mean? Okay, so at least I'm grateful for small mercy. Second thing about doctors being treated badly. There is a climate of fear within the NHS because the higher hierarchy of the trust and the directorate and the medical directors and so on. I don't know where they are. I won't use the word complicit, but certainly moral collapse. That's the difference, okay? Complicit means you actively go out to support killing the Palestinians. The other way around is, oh, I better not deal with this. This is too complicated. Duck for cover. That's moral collapse. So that's different. So because of so many doctors being persecuted, a lot of our doctors just dare not speak up. I remember in 2021 when Israel attacked Gaza, remember? I think it's Guardians of the War, where they actually killed so many health workers. We drafted a letter, stand in solidarity with the health workers of Gaza. Within 48 hours, you got 1,600 signatures from health workers. Now, I really don't know whether my colleagues would actually sign out of fear. So it is terrible. So I feel that we really have to support colleagues who have suffered and have been persecuted as a result of taking a stand for Palestine. Because if we don't protect them, we don't stand up with them, then there'll be nobody left to stand up. I think it's also our fault. So support can take many different ways. You can either give money enormously, you can sign, or you can actively hold meetings and campaign for, or hold rallies. You take a choice, okay? But there are many ways of doing it. And it's up to us to support each other. We talk about solidarity with the Palestinians. We forgot to mention that we have to have solidarity with each other. If we do not support each other, we'll be struggling alone. And where will that take us? The strength of the Palestinian people are that if you actually look at how they are, you live in a refugee camp with them, which I have, you live in Gaza for months and months, like me, you realize what kind of loving community, supportive community with each other. When I talk about 35,000 orphans without mothers and fathers, okay, in Gaza. In a country like UK, that'd be disastrous. How many orphanages have you got to build? In Gaza, the neighbors take over, and auntie, uncle from far, far away will take over. This is the strength of solidarity with each other. And even now, the Israelis wonder, where did these people get the strength from? That's why they got to destroy the Palestinian family. They've already destroyed nearly 2,000 families, completely wiped out, because they've seen the importance of their family structure in the struggle for justice.
Would you like to add anything?
Just a bit more of like a practical question, I guess. Obviously, we know the situation is dire, to put it mildly. What actual supplies do people have, and like what is able to be being done by medical workers at the minute? Like what kind of level of treatment are we talking that they are still able to actually do with what supplies they've got?
You better take this one.
Well, so materials going into Gaza are extremely limited now. There was a small amount that was able to get through, I think, via the WHO not so long ago. We're talking a matter of a handful of trucks, so they are still getting some resources into the healthcare system. There was a lot that happened during that brief so-called ceasefire period, and I think most likely with the understanding that the ceasefire agreement would break down or would be breached, as it was. So there was a real effort to try and get as much into Gaza from a kind of material point of view during that period. The sad reality, though, is that, and I think we may have discussed this briefly last night, that the healthcare system has adapted to the conditions of occupation, of manufactured scarcity. The healthcare workers that I was working with, they trained under the conditions of occupation and apartheid. They've worked through a multitude of previous Israeli escalations, and now, of course, the genocide. So they have adapted to working under these conditions with ingenuity and resourcefulness. So I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing now. I don't think any other healthcare system in the world would have been able to withstand this and to still retain some degree of functionality. As we speak this evening, a short while before I got here, Nasser Hospital, which is one of the few Ministry of Health hospitals still functioning or partially functioning in Gaza, is surrounded by Israeli tanks. They've had gunfire and artillery strikes in the vicinity of the hospital itself. And we have friends and colleagues in the ER who are treating patients with whatever resources they still have available to them. In any situation, they are using second or third line interventions. So the antibiotics that you would normally use are not available. They're using third or fourth line antibiotics. The surgical equipment that you would want to use, they're using lesser equipment, less good quality equipment. In some cases, having to reuse things that shouldn't be reused. They're having to be sort of re-sterilized and so on. But yeah, I mean, exceptionally difficult conditions, and as I say, I think it's a measure of training and working under such situations of profound manufactured scarcity that the system has been able to withstand what it's withstood. But make no mistake, really. I mean, what we are seeing here is Israel retaining and maintaining a stranglehold over the Gaza Strip. One of the things I've reflected on with some colleagues who were able to go back to Gaza recently is that there's a sort of double-edged sword there, that unless you open every single intervention with a statement about the fact that there is no functional humanitarian system, there is no humanitarian access, the fact that you've been there and that your presence is being publicized in media channels and so on, can be misused by Israel to say, look, we are enabling humanitarian access, we are upholding our duties under international law. And indeed, if you go back and if you look at Israel's case at the ICJ in January of last year, that was a core pillar of their defense against the accusation of genocide. Well, look, we're letting people like James into Gaza, how on earth could we be genocidaires? So you have to lead by saying, you know, I will not allow my presence to be manipulated in such a way, and to be very clear about the fact that nothing really materially has changed for the Palestinian people. If there's a trickle of trucks that are allowed in, that really doesn't change anything, frankly. Hassan Abu-Sitta and others have talked about the titration of humanitarian access, of humanitarian aid. And they wrote that paper actually in 2021, long before the genocide. So we're really just seeing a continuation of that long-standing strategy.
Thank you.
I just want to add something. You know, for Gaza to live, okay, they need 700 trucks every day of aid. Because Gaza is 75% refugees. Now, nothing is getting through, and then WHO 17 trucks, blockaded are 9,000 trucks. So really, it is not a question that we don't have enough aid. It is that aid is being blockaded. This is a blockade. This is an active denial of ways of survival which people need. In other words, it's murder. It's just murder. Just call it what it's called, okay? Starve to death, okay? So we can talk round and round and round, and you know, ingenuity. The fact is that there are 9,000 trucks, and MAP has enough money to send another 1,000 more. Just MAP alone. I'm not talking about anybody else. Okay. So this is the dimension. This is actually a massacre.
Thank you. Some of you might have seen through the middle of this, I'm not just like, you know, watching telly or something here. I've actually received a call during this from a 16-year-old boy that I've been in touch with since during this genocide. He's based in Gaza with his family. His name is Ahmed, and I speak to him several times a day. He and his family of 7 have been displaced several times. They're living in tents like most people in Gaza. He tells me that the bombs are relentless, the drones are relentless, and they're just trying to survive. His home village has been, the apartment of course has been destroyed, the building has been destroyed, the entire village has been destroyed, all their memories, all their belongings. I want to read something. This is a 16-year-old boy who, he sent me this yesterday. We were just to end on the note of solidarity and the significance of this global movement for Palestinian justice and liberation. So to Aisha, and by extension all of us, from the heart of wounded Gaza, he's on the call, by the way, now, I'm live streaming to him. I send you my deepest thanks and sincere gratitude. People like you, who raise the voice of Palestine and stand for what's right, are the light that keeps us going and holding on to hope. Thank you for your support, your voice, your genuine compassion. You're not just standing with us, you are a part of our strength. Palestine never forgets those who love it, and Gaza keeps kind hearts close. On behalf of everyone living under siege, thank you.
Aww.
So I'd really like us, I'm just going to pan round for Ahmed to see this as well. He's from Khan Yunis, he's in his tent right now. Free, free? Palestine! Free, free? Palestine! From the river to the sea?
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea?
Palestine will be free!
From the sea to the river?
Palestine will live forever!
Free, free?
Palestine!
Free, free?
Palestine!
So thank you to everyone, thank you to our speakers, thank you to Ahmed for joining us online. And, oh, you'd like to say something?
I want you to do something tonight when you go home. Just write to the BBC. I have heard on the news, just half a day, 5 mentions of 2 being killed in Ukraine. That is bad, okay? 2 persons being killed. Not a single word about 48 people in Gaza being murdered.
Again.
Right. So just write on this, just once. Just do it, okay?
Thank you. We'll close for the evening. Oh, just to say, everyone, as well, for those who don't know, UK Lawyers for Israel have issued a statement today condemning the camp, and obviously, so we've now got them on our case, obviously under totally unsubstantiated claims and spurious grounds, things about flags and banners. Someone complained that they keep putting up more banners. It's like, yeah, we got more messages we're trying to communicate. So we will be standing our ground, standing strong and drawing on solidarity from the movement to ensure that we stay here, we're going nowhere. Free, free, Palestine! Thanks, everyone. Yeah. We won't be intimidated! Not until we're liberated!
Won't stop till we're liberated!
Won't stop till. Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
No, not at all.